Hello and welcome to the Sound Up Seattle podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Seattle and Washington sports. I'm your host, Tyler Cartwright, joined as always by my co-host,
John Carey.
And you may notice I'm looking above the camera. It's because we're in person. We're finally recording together for the first time in months.
Reunited, and it feels so good.
So today for you all, we got obviously Seahawks, obviously, football with regards to the NCAA. We've got value dogs. We've got a light discussion on how we feeling about the Mariners with the playoffs going on right now. And then big Sounders, Kraken just started. We're all over the place. Anything to say before we get started, John?
No, a lot of sports. Let's jump in.
A lot of sports.
When are we going to talk about art, music?
Here is some Coyote Picnic. All right, John, let's jump into what was the biggest and most disappointing game of the week by far, I think, for us. The Seahawks losing 29-20 against the Giants. Right off the bat, what's running through your head?
I thought it was our most poorly coached game of the season. And, we're going to have some bigger conversations about Mike McDonald and potentially Ryan Grubb. But in every game up to this game, I felt like one of them had done their jobs excellently. Either the defense overperformed with injuries or whatever, or the offense looked electric. And this was the first game this season where it's like our defense did a really bad job against a team that they should have done a good job against. And our offense was really sputtering, and the play calling decisions were very strange for basically the entire game. So I was very disappointed with our two new lights on the hill, both of whom I really like, but just a tough week coaching-wise.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Seahawks, you kind of defensively, you go into this game, you think the Giants don't have Malik Neighbors, and it's Daniel Jones. Like, you're looking at this Giants team and you're like, there's no way the Seahawks defensively should be struggling like they did. And I think what that really comes down to is Leonard Williams is coming off an injury. He only had one tackle. I think Byron Murphy being injured as well, not playing in this game at all. Those are both felt in a big way because the Seahawks could not get penetration on the defensive side. They couldn't really disrupt Daniel Jones, and when they did, he was able to kind of get flushed out of the pocket and able to, pass for 23-34, 257 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, that's just a solid game. We would love if Geno had that game.
Yeah, that's a pretty classic Geno stat line, to be completely honest.
So I think just in general, the defense is really feeling the loss of our kind of front line. Reek Woolen is definitely, I think he went out with an injury at one point and we had to kind of step into a backup coming in. So defensively, that was a struggle. I think McDonald, he did a decent job just kind of doing what he could with what he had, but defensively you expect more from the Seahawks team with kind of how they're built in against this Giants team. Yeah,
they're obviously missing Byron Murphy. They've got a kind of a slew of injuries right now that are hurting this defense. So it's not the best week to judge, Mike. But when you have a team like this Giants team missing their game breaking weapon, and starting a guy like Daniel Jones, who's not exactly considered the cream of the quarterback crop, you have to be able to do something with the game plan, do something with your scheme to at least make life hard for them. And it wasn't. All they were doing was throwing, check downs and slants to Darius Slayton all game. It was kind of exhausting. So, Tyron Tracy Jr., their rookie running back, had an awesome game, was running roughshod over us. And that is something I, point more to injuries and our, pretty lackluster linebacker core struggling. That's not necessarily Mike's fault, but the way he let Daniel Jones and Darius Slayton, really dictate the way they wanted to play offense all game. That's something, you can have high schoolers out there scheme something up to make that a little tougher on them. So that was frustrating.
I think that comes from the lack of offense. I think in terms of offensive production, we had 20 points. 7 of those points came from the defense scoring on a 99-yard fumble recovery.
This game could have easily been 36-13.
It could have been bad. Yeah. And I think that comes from, the offense really struggled, and you talked about it a little bit. The defensive scheme by the Giants was blitz, 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 and then every once in a while they would drop back, but it's like they're attacking Geno because our offensive line is not necessarily the strongest. You also have issues with Ryan Grubb kind of relying so heavily on Geno. Geno's 28 for 40 for 284 yards isn't awful. He had a touchdown. He didn't have an awful game. He got sacked 7 times. Like he's dropping back basically every single play. And we ran a designed run play 7 times. Like when you do that, you make the defense stay on the field that much longer because you're not taking time off the clock. You're letting the Giants just like stay on the field every time you have, a 3 and out. If you're not advancing the ball, it's just that much harder. So I think honestly in this game, I think it was more on Ryan Grubb and his inability to adjust, I think we threw a bunch of screens to Kenneth Walker. I think he had 7 receptions. Like he got the ball, but you got to be able to run the ball, especially in just like design against this blitz, because you got to know that that's kind of how you're being attacked after the first half, and he just really never did.
Correct, and that was what killed basically every single one of our drives. Is the lack of nuance with this offense. They were able to just pin their ears back and come after the quarterback every single time. 7 sacks is a ridiculous number, and it's because honestly, Grubb kind of panicked a little bit. It looked like they were down 7-0, and actually that's not true. They were up 7-0. Yeah, but they were down 10-7, and just feeling like, we need to go get the lead back. But you have to lean on your running game more, not only because the Seahawks have one of the more efficient running games in football right now, but also because if you're going to run this little play action out of your passing game, you have to run the football just to keep a defense guessing. This is an offense that not only did not run the football barely at all, but they hardly run any play action plays to confuse the defense and give Geno a chance to attack a defense in space. They just don't do it. That's how you see something like 7 sacks happen in a game, even behind a bad offensive line. The Bears have figured out with their atrocious offensive line how to, play call to avoid pressure on the quarterback, and Caleb Williams is suddenly looking like a real NFL quarterback. So you're 100% right. I think especially coming off last week against Detroit, it's like, Ryan Grubb is God. Like, thank God we, brought this guy in. I was really disappointed with the way that he schemed up against this, pretty lackluster Giants defense and put Geno in a really tough spot. Credit to Geno for no turnovers on the game, because he was put in a tough spot for basically that entire game. Yeah.
I think you look at statistically the Seahawks as a team, they're kind of a top 10-ish offense. I would say top 5 maybe, where they're a top 3 passing offense just in terms of yards and the amount that Geno's been able to succeed this season. That's been awesome. And they're a top 10 offense when it comes to rushing. The problem is they don't rush the ball. They're the lowest rushing total in the NFL right now. They just don't attempt to rush the ball. And so, they're getting 5 yards a carry on the rushing side of things, but they just don't do it. And like you're saying, you got to have that threat. Otherwise, you're just sitting there dropping back to a blitz every single time.
Yeah, and the Hawks are lucky enough to have 2 running backs that they've relied on this year. It seems pretty clear we prefer Walker over Charbonnet, but Charbonnet showed he can be a 20 carry a game guy if you need him to be. So the fact that you have these 2 guys you can lean on, it's not even like you're asking Derrick Henry to carry the ball 25 times. It's like, no, we got 2 guys, give them each 10 carries. They'll keep them plenty fresh over the course of the year. And not only will you find success on the ground, but you will make life easier for Geno. So that was frustrating. One other offensive frustration we have to talk about is DK Metcalf having a crucial fumble, trying to fight for extra yards for the second week in a row. The second week in a row. If you look over the course of his career, his fumbles per season are out of control. It's wild. For a guy as big and strong as him.
He's very fumble prone.
He is so fumble prone. It is driving me insane. What do you do about this?
That's just something you gotta teach. Like, you gotta be like, hey, either do the Tyler Lockett, like catch the ball, and if you feel the presence of anybody near you, go down.
Get down to the ground. Yeah, that's worked out great for Tyler.
DK, I think he knows when there's a play that he's gonna explode for big yards. Like he'll catch the ball behind his defender, and he'll be able to run and get a touchdown. Those are his big 70-yard plays. I think he really struggles because he thinks he can break out of a tackle. Like when he catches those plays, those are not broken tackles. Those are yards after the catch that nobody's in front of him and he just beats them with speed.
Correct.
It's so hard in football to break a tackle and not get tackled immediately afterwards. Like you just kind of got to accept that you're going to go down. So.
And this is exactly what we were talking about last week. I'm like, okay, if it's 3rd and 7 and you catch the ball 1 yard short, there's a reason to fight for that yardage. But if it's 1st and 10 and you catch a 15-yard slant and you got 3 guys immediately around you, it's not going to bring shame on your ancestors to not rabidly fight against going down and fumble the goddamn ball. Yeah. So frustrating. I don't know what to say to the guy to get it into his head because crucial fumbles in 2 straight weeks.
It's been a big point of discussion in just like the Seahawks circles. He's kind of the reason that it's been tough offensively. Those are a couple good drives that DK fumbles, and we have to deal with.
Huge drives on both. That was a chance for the Hawks to take the lead at the start of the 3rd quarter.
Yeah.
That he fumbled and the Giants immediately scored. The fumble against Detroit, we could be 5-0 if it wasn't. Seriously, there's a real chance that this team is 5-0 without those 2 fumbles. Instead, they're sitting here 3-2, coming off 2 straight losses. Man, yeah. DK is obviously a huge part of this offense. With Lockett aging out a little bit, Jackson Smith's coming up, but DK is the guy in terms of our number 1 weapon, and he's super valuable. Bro,
he just needs to. Yeah, he just needs to.
Please.
To hang on just a little bit more.
Please help us out.
Talking about this.
Sorry, just one other thing.
Yeah.
So classic of a guy that's like been the strongest guy he knows his entire life. It's just like, I don't have to carefully hold the football. I'm the strongest dude here. It's like, bro, that's not how it works. That's not how like leverage works. But anyway.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things too, like it perpetuates. The more he fumbles the ball, the more people are just going to like smack that ball every single time they get near him.
Correct. That's a great point. Like every single person's punching at the ball when they get near him now.
Yeah. Anyways, let's talk this upcoming week. The Seahawks have the 49ers in a game where if they win this game, they'll be 4-2 in a firm lead, I would assume, in the NFC West. If they lose it, they're going to be tied with the Niners at 3-3 and be in second place. And really, after the 3-0 start, which could have been maybe a little fraudulent based on who they played and how things are going right now.
Sure.
But you also, like you said, look at those last 2 games, and it's like we've had a couple miscues that have caused those losses. I don't think the team is as bad as some of the reactionary stuff is. How are you feeling against this 49ers team? What are you thinking coming into this week?
I feel pretty good. Not as good as I felt against the Giants, but here we are. Shout out to the NFC West for being statistically the worst conference in the NFC.
As we talked 5 weeks ago about how great they were.
And they still might be, but top to bottom, the Rams are good at 1-4, but just a lot of injuries in conference, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of conference-on-conference crime as well. We've probably played the most in-conference games of any NFC teams. But, Seahawks are the only positive team at 3-2, full game lead over the Cardinals and Niners. How do I feel about this week? The Niners aren't that scary. With Christian McCaffrey out, with the players they've lost on defense, both to injury and to free agency over the years, they're not the powerhouse we're used to. Brock Purdy is actually probably the best player on the entire team.
Crazy enough, yeah.
It's probably Bosa and then him, which is wild considering I was expecting a potential regression year from Brock. Mm-hmm. But Ayuk's been a complete non-factor. Debo has missed more games than he's played. Kittle has had issues with injuries. And Jordan Mason has been solid for them, but he's had issues fumbling the football. And their defense they can still get pressure on the quarterback, which is a concern. But their secondary does not scare me at all. In other terms, this is just a much more human team than they have been in the past, and maybe more than they will be once they get McCaffrey back, if they get him back right. I think this is a pretty good matchup. Do you know if it's in San Francisco or if it's in Seattle?
I believe it's in San Francisco.
Okay. That'll make it tougher.
Maybe. I can look. Yeah. No. It's in Seattle. Never mind. Sorry, I was reading it wrong.
No, that's fine. I expect the game to be pretty electric. Obviously, a lot of frustrated fans in Lumen last week, but with the team being 3-2, this being a big in-division game, to your point, to get a little separation against the Cardinals and the Niners, I expect it to be rocking in there, and I hope there were some lessons learned. Because I think, coming out of that Detroit game, that was the best loss all season. Defense obviously needs some work, but it was so funny. I have a lifelong Hawks buddy that just texted me. It's like every game should be Detroit-Seattle. It's like this is the best loss all season. So I think we walked away from that loss kind of content.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine there's any contentment after that Giants loss. And I'm hoping this team plays angry, and I'm hoping they clean up both execution and game plan mistakes that we've seen.
Something that we didn't talk about enough, I think, was that the Giants were coming off a Thursday night game the week before. They had 10 days of rest. The Seahawks were coming off a Monday night game. The difference there is 4 days of rest for those guys. Defensively, that creates a lot of struggle, and especially in a game where it's so offensively minded. Like, the defense was trying so hard. They're doing a lot. It's definitely like that Giants game came at a bad time. I think this Niners game is going to come at a time where both teams played on Sunday. Mm-hmm. They're both, injuries have kind of riddled both teams. Seahawks defensively more on the interior. And then the Niners offensively. But I think this game is kind of prime. Like you're saying, it's kind of a prime DK game. Like, the middle of the field's a little tough with the Niners with Fred Warner. Absolutely. Their interior is great. It's those wings, kind of like the outside lines. And that's where DK shines. I think this is going to be the type of game that DK could explode. Mm-hmm. And another high-scoring game. Yeah,
it's worth noting he's had those big DK Metcalf touchdowns. He's had, I think, 2 or 3 already this year, which, Grubb is using him appropriately. Grubb really knows how to use a guy like that. Honestly, sure. Rome vibes, kind of like NFL Rome in a lot of ways. But we saw that more at the beginning of this year than we did all of last year. And it was very refreshing to be like, 75-yard touchdown from DK. He's a guy that won't necessarily have 8 catches for 150 yards, but he'll have 2 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Because he'll bust one off. And this is a game where you could definitely see that happening. Yeah. Injuries are tough. I'm a little worried. With the Niners, they've just had issues with turnovers. So it'll be really, really important to win the turnover battle. Because if they play efficiently on offense, with, Jordan Mason playing the way he has, and with Purdy looking as good as he has, I'm worried that they could dice this defense up, considering that Daniel Jones just did it. But the other thing I wanted to note is, Daniel Jones has had a really good year so far.
Yeah, Daniel Jones has been pretty good.
And we all very rightfully assumed that's like, clearly Malik Neighbors is just the greatest rookie wide receiver of all time and is lifting all boats. But, maybe Danny J has just figured some stuff out.
Yeah.
He's only, been in the league 5 or 6 years. Sometimes that 6th year, things really click. So.
I mean, the Giants' first loss was to the Vikings, who we thought were fraudulent, but, like, they're 5-0. Like, they were good. I think as the Giants have gone through the season, they've just been proven that they're better than I think people thought they were.
Correct. Yeah, they easily could have won that Dallas game. That's a good point.
Yeah, and I think the Seahawks are kind of trending in the opposite direction.
Yes.
And so this is definitely a get-right game if they're going to get right. We've talked about this. This is going to be – I think we were both thinking this was going to be closer to a 500 season. You were thinking a little bit more 7-10. I was thinking a little bit more 9-8. But it's kind of hovering right around the breaking point here in the next couple weeks. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, 3-0 to go 0-2. It's like, okay, what is this team going to be? And we're going to find out. This is a tough stretch in the schedule for the Hawks. They've got, of their next 6 games, they got 4 divisional games, including both Niners games. That might be a blessing in that we could potentially fully miss McCaffrey this year. But then our 2 non-cons are Bills, Falcons, who are both, pretty well-rounded teams with issues. Okay, they're not the Chiefs, but, they're solid teams. So this will be a really important part of their schedule, particularly with the conference games. So figuring their shit out and figuring what they are going to be is going to be very important.
Yeah. Also, one thing that I just wanted to note, Seahawks currently 20th in just defensive, I think, points allowed. Defensively, I think that just comes because they allowed, 81 points, 71 points the last 2 weeks. Like it's the last 2 weeks have been an issue. They played the Lions and the Lions dropped a 40 piece on them. Like Correct. It's just that statistically can create issues. I think they're much more of a middling to top 15,
We were blown away by their defense the first 2 weeks of this season before the injury bug really got to them. So, both of us are disappointed with Mike's, performance with this defense the last couple of weeks, but I want to give him the benefit of the doubt until he gets right. Because, once again, we played the Broncos with a rookie Bo Nix week 1, but our takeaway was like this defense is kind of flying around.
And the Broncos look better as they're kind of similar to the Giants, like they've looked better over the season.
I'm not going to say a single positive thing about Bo Nix. You can drag it out of me.
I'm not saying Bo Nix was good. I'm saying Sean Payton has gotten every ounce of talent that Bo Nix has in his frail little body.
I will cheers to that. That's real. But it's heard and it's noted. We're keeping eyes on this defense because Ryan Grubb looks like he's going to get this offense. I mean, this has been easily a top 10 offense in the NFL. It's been basically the only offense not afraid to throw the ball down the field.
Yeah.
And we love and worship Grubb for that reason. But time for McDonald to earn his money at head coach. Don't make us put Ryan Grubb in charge. Just kidding. No, we like him where he's at.
Yes. All right. Moving on. Do you want to talk value dogs? Do you want to talk NCAA football? We've got Huskies beating Michigan this week. What are you feeling, John?
Let's say value dogs. I'm too excited to talk about Michigan.
Let's do it. Let's talk good game. Let's talk a good game.
Yeah.
All right. The University of Washington Huskies. Coming in this week, we're favored against number 10 Michigan, which we will give the Vegas credit for because UW wins this game 27-17, even after 2 missed field goals from Grady Groves. You and I were texting during this game. It was like, what is happening? This kicker was amazing last year. I don't know what's been going on.
Yes.
But a really, really solid game by the Huskies against what I think is a pretty fraudulent Michigan team. I think they played one of the top 10 teams pretty tough, and that was their one loss. And this really proved that. I think they dropped to 24. Like, I don't think they're a top 25 team.
Correct. Yeah, they completely plummeted. They were. And Vegas knew it. Shout out to Vegas for being on top of their shit. Like, they could smell the fraudulence a mile away.
Shout out to us also because we both said take the Huskies in this game.
Correct. Shout out to us. But, and they had played Texas close, and Texas is monstrous, so there was still a residual, like, can they be good? But it's like, well, they don't throw the football. So probably not. In 2024, probably not that good. I was really impressed. Both sides of the ball. I mean, this is still a team that is a solid running game, which if you can't defend the run, they can run all over you. So I was really impressed with the way UW started. Where do you want to start with this discussion?
I think.
How about this? It was the most beautiful day of the year. It was absolutely
gorgeous in Seattle. Yeah,
gorgeous. It was amazing. Big Ten football, love it.
Did you see the?
If that would have been a Pac-12 game, it would have been raining.
Did you see the Bill Belichick clip? He was like on the Pat McAfee show, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it was gorgeous." That was like the first UW game he'd been to.
Nice.
And he was like, "It was gorgeous out there, like Seattle, the stadium out there, everything's awesome." And they were just like raving about UW's, just like the weather and everything. I was
hey
like,
Bill, come on, we'll take defensive coordinator. Don't feel like you got to go crawling back to the NFL, my guy.
Yeah. So this, I think, what I want to talk about in general is this UW's team's defense. Like the UW defense is statistically a top 10 defense in all of college football.
Really?
Yeah, they're top 3 in passing defense.
That is astounding.
Yeah, like they're kind of middling in run defense,
which we knew.
Defensive back wise and just like passing defense, this team is so elite, and that comes from Cameron Fabiculanon, if I'm saying that right. I'm hoping. And just these safeties and defensive backs that are just holding it down on the outside. Granted, we haven't played a ton of like super pass heavy, great passing teams.
Correct.
Rutgers have a really good running back. Michigan obviously is not that.
But Rutgers and Wazoo are definitely pass first. No, I'm sorry. Rutgers is not pass
Rutgers
first.
has one, yeah.
Correct. Wazoo is definitely a pass first team.
Yes.
And we were impressed with the way our defense played, and we lost the game in other phases. But that's a fair point.
Defensively, I think is his first name Steve? The Belichick son has been doing a good job.
Mr. Belichick, what you can call him. Yeah, he's done a great job. Instituting Daddy's defense. We're probably being disrespectful to this guy, but I just wanted to shout you out for nailing Cameron Fabiculanon. Fabiculanan. Whew, that is a mouthful.
That, right? I was ready with that one.
That's a lot of consonants and a lot of vowels. But yeah, that's actually a really good point of just like, I think particularly coming off last year, we were so used to the running defense being like a real issue that I've really just been kind of staring at the way we defend the run all season and maybe taking for granted how effective we've been at defending the pass. And you're right. There will be games that are going to be a better test of that, concept, particularly Oregon. Penn State can throw the ball around pretty well as USC. But so far, that has looked really good. And the fact that they're even middle of the pack in rushing defense, where like last year, it was like a kind of a dirty secret of like, hopefully teams don't figure out that if they do this every single time, they're probably going to win the game.
Yeah.
That's really encouraging. So yeah, shout out to Steve Belichick, and shout out to these corners and these safeties and, some of our middle linebackers for really effectively preventing the pass.
Yeah. One guy I want to shout out is Prysock. Prysock's been really fun to watch. He's had a couple pass breakups and pass defenses that I think were just like pretty crucial more in the red zone area. Like he's been really good in those tight spaces. So I've just been watching this team and enjoying our pass defense as well. Fabiculanon had the interception in this Michigan game as well. So yeah, a really good game all around. And I really think the more I think about this game and this team, I really think the issue has just been our special teams. Like you think that Wazoo game, it was kind of just one dumb play where they ran the ball the wrong way. Like just a tough game there.
Sure.
But then like the Rutgers game, we should have won we should have been ahead by 3 and had the ball with time left and just kneeled it.
Yeah.
And this game, we obviously missed 2 field goals, but we still end up with the 10-point win. It's like we could have killed Michigan this week. Like,
correct.
It could have been a 33-17. Like, felt like a slaughter.
We basically controlled this game from start to finish. It felt very. As I was watching it, there was a time, I think we were down in the third quarter. Yeah, well, we were down big. We had to go 13-0 in the fourth to beat them. But I always felt like this offense was churning and that we had the potential to get stops on every drive. So I guess let's just do it. What do you even do with Grady Gross? Because obviously he is single-handedly responsible in my mind for our loss to Rutgers last week.
Yeah.
Going 1 for 3?
1 for 4.
1 for 4. Goodness gracious. And then he starts this game.
Dude, you want to know what's great? I'm sorry.
No, please.
I was looking at the stats. He's got the most field goals in the Big Ten right now.
No way.
Like he's got 9 made field goals.
Yeah, because we've put him, to be fair, we've been exercising his leg. Like this offense has been incredibly efficient at moving the ball and not efficient in the red zone.
Exactly. We talked about that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so it's not surprising. I guess it's a little surprising to hear that he's missed 5 field goals in the last 2 weeks and is still leading the Big Ten in made field goals.
He could be up by 5. Like
could be dominating. Yeah. This guy could be going to the NFL if he just made his goddamn kicks.
Yep.
But so he starts, 1 for 4 last week, misses his first 2 attempts. So he is 1 for his last 6 going into the fourth quarter. And I don't know if you have to shout out Jedfish or like condemn him for putting the ball back in front of Grady Gross down 14-17 to try and tie the game. He hits it. And then obviously hits another one later in the fourth to, build the cushion and kind of lock in the win.
You winter soldier that man. You put him on like an electric chair and you just get rid of the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, goddamn right. Yeah, electrodes to the brain style. But like, so I guess on one hand, like if he misses one more goddamn kick, like I live in Seattle and I will find him. But on the other hand, he did hit 2 really clutch kicks to, flip this game around in the fourth quarter. And obviously, he was amazing last year. It's hard to even relate him to the guy he was last year because he was so automatic and so clutch for us.
Yeah.
I don't really know what to do with him.
You stick it out. He's the guy who earned a scholarship last year. He's got football is paying for his school right now.
Yeah.
So you don't want to do anything to hurt that. But
we'll fucking earn your money then is what I say.
I will say, efficiency-wise, UW scored 3 touchdowns this week. Like that's much better than we've seen.
Yes.
And I think that is something to point to and say, okay, offensively we've seen improvement here, and we're going to get less field goals to Grady Gross over the next few weeks. But really, when you look at it, like this offense has been so efficient. What is that? Including the 2 field goals that he missed, that's 7 trips within the red zone, basically trips that should have ended in points, which is really efficient. That's really good offensive production from UW here, and we've been talking about it for a while. It's like their red zone efficiency has been an issue.
Yes,
but we've seen a step up here against what is a pretty stout Michigan team defensively. Mm-hmm. I think I was more impressed this week with our offense. Obviously, special teams, like we said, was the issue. But offensively, we've looked pretty good.
We've looked fantastic. And we were talking about how the box scores weren't reflecting how efficient this offense was. And, to be fair, we cleaned up the red zone stuff in this game, which is a big reason we put up 27 points and not 12. But what today was really just things kind of clicking in terms of water finding its level of like, when this offense is clicking at every phase, they're going to start scoring touchdowns. And they finally started scoring touchdowns. Will Rogers was a ho-hum Will Rogers game, 67% completion percentage, 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is every single week stuff from Will Rogers. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks in college football for that reason. His consistency week to week, what you get from this guy. He did throw his first pick of the season. Which, it
was bound to happen eventually.
Correct. You don't want that hanging over him in a big game that he's never thrown a pick. So we'll go ahead and step past that. But Jonah Coleman was awesome again, leading our backfield. Desmond Williams Jr. had some nice carries. Our running game in general, we were averaging basically 4 yards a pop from every guy we handed the ball to. Yeah. Denzel Boston was awesome. Giles Jackson was awesome. Those two have clearly kind of, secured their spots along with Kiki Latu. Kiki Latu, he's our first string tight end, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, correct. Yeah. So those two guys, and then Latu and Jeremiah Hunter. God, I love that we have 2 tight ends that I really like.
Yeah, it's kind of like last year with Culp and Westover.
Yeah.
Like, that was a good little tandem.
Yeah, because Jeremiah is the Westover, and in that same role. That's a really good point.
I'm looking at the passing of the quarterbacks that we've played. It's been I think 115 yards for the last 3 Big Ten games. Like it's just crazy. It really shows how good Mateer was. Also, like Mateer was really good in that game.
Yeah, damn right.
But this passing defense is just super impressive. I think this Iowa game is going to be a real test for our run defense because they don't really have McNamara's not really a big passing threat.
Does that sound familiar to a team we might have just played this week?
It's one of those things where it's like. I feel like we're figuring out, and this is like this next step is going to be figuring out how to stop the run. And this is Belichick's. This is why he's came from the NFL. It's like this guy is going to figure out over the course of the season how to adjust to stopping the run because obviously our passing defense is great, and this is a great game to test that before we get into the more pass heavy offenses.
Yeah, and he's shown the ability to adjust in that regard. And just because I think really what we're seeing from the pass defense is like. He knows how to exploit quarterbacks by not making it easy. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see when we play an offense good enough that's like, okay, it's not enough to just not make it easy. But so far, it's basically been enough to scheme up, your back guys to just make things not easy on the opposing offense. But we saw in the Michigan game, we were kind of keyed in on the run. Khalil Mullins, less than 4 yards a carry. Donovan Edwards was actually really good, but partially because he ripped off a couple of big runs. Yeah. But they were doing a good job of, stacking the box and hurting these guys, such that when Alex Orji actually got hurt and Jack Tuttle came in, they scored 14 points in 2 drives because we had to completely change the way we were playing defense for a guy that's actually going to throw the ball. Because we'd built our defense, our game plan against Orji, and we knew exactly how they were going to play. So I was actually encouraged that's we have designed our defense specifically for this quarterback. Now we have to make an adjustment. Yeah. And we did both of those things effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, this was just a great game overall.
It was a great game.
It's just one of those things that you really capitalize on as a team. You're like, okay, we just beat the number 10 team in the nation. We can do this. We can make a big stride here in the Big Ten. We belong here.
4-2 is very different than 3-3.
Yes.
This is a team that now has a chance to, try to make some noise in the Big Ten. Still has a very real chance of getting up into the top 25. Yeah.
And that was a game at the beginning of the season you and I had kind of put away. We were like, that's going to be a loss.
Correct.
So, and it's great because obviously we thought we were going to beat Wazoo. So we're kind of back to square one a little bit. Mm-hmm. This Iowa game is going to be huge. To be 5-2 instead of 4-3 is just pushing that.
Correct.
Would be great.
Yeah, I believe that we can and should go 3-0 in our next 3. And that's maybe a hot take because we're unranked and Indiana's at 18. I think we're a better team than Indiana. I think our offense is way more professionally built and our defense is playing better than theirs right now. And then Iowa and USC, I just think we're better than. If we do that, we will be going into Penn State. What would that be? 7-2. And then we'll have Penn State, UCLA, Oregon. So 2 of the top 4 teams in the country in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If we get one of those 2 games, and if we finish the season, assuming we beat UCLA, that would be 9-3.
That'd be awesome.
With 2 top 10 wins. That's a team that has an argument for a top 12 spot in the country.
An argument, yes. And especially,
3 of the top 4 ranked teams in the country are in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
They're going to have at least 2. I bet you they have at least 3 reps.
I really think it's going to be 3 representatives.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
So if we beat Penn State, even if Penn State is a 10-2 team or whatever it is, there's an argument to be made for us to be
correct
in that spot.
Because once again, if we're going into that game having beaten Iowa, Indiana, and USC, we will be 21 at the lowest.
Yeah.
And then if we beat Penn State, that'll push us up to number 10.
Yeah.
And then if we lose to, say, Oregon in the last game of the season, then there will be an argument about whether or not they deserve to be there. But it's interesting, man. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's so discouraging to get those 2 losses that should have both been wins, in my opinion.
Yes.
But after the Michigan game, I have a lot more belief as to what this team can accomplish this season.
I am in full agreement with you. I think we're better than this Indiana team who's ranked 18. I think, we should at the very least be 5-1, if not 6-0. Honestly, that Wazoo game, I can't believe we lost it. But I think, going into the last 3 games, UCLA's looked bad. So I think the last 3 games are the Penn State, Oregon are going to be the true test.
Yeah. Well, gosh. Can't do much more of a test than the 3 and 4 in 3 weeks. So.
Yes. So let's move to Wazoo. Wazoo did not play last week. They play Portland State this weekend, and it's what I assume to be a blowout.
Fresno State.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is basketball. Jesus Christ.
Well, you are correct that they have not played since the Boise State game. But yes, they played Fresno State on Saturday, October 12th. I feel really good about this game. Fresno State's 3-2. They are an okay Mountain West team, and this Wazoo team is still, in my opinion, real. Yeah. Very real. Boise State continues to impress, and I think over the course of the season that loss is going to look better and better.
God, Boise State looks unreal.
Yeah, and it's nice getting that Boise State behind us, just in terms of, we get Fresno State, Hawaii, San Diego State, Utah State, New Mexico, Oregon State, and Wyoming. Oregon State's the biggest test left here. Mm-hmm. This is a team that could win every single one of the rest of these games. And with 12 available spots, if you finish the season with 1 loss in what is still technically, a major power conference in the Pac-12, even though they've really played a Mountain West schedule, they could really be in discussion. Getting them and Boise State in would be potentially fun. So we'll have to see. It was a bummer not to be a little more competitive in that Boise State game, but I feel good about every single game the rest of this year from what I've seen.
I would agree. Boise State looks dominant offensively, and the only reason they were ranked so low is because they lost to Oregon in what was such a tight game. But it's Boise State is going to climb back up the rankings so quickly.
Correct, and they have a pretty easy rest of their schedule as well. And as they stack wins and as people continue to just drool over Gentry, they are going to it's really going to change the way that people see them. Yeah,
I think both of these teams could end up in the top 12. If Wazoo ends up sweeping, winning the rest of their games, and then Boise State wins the rest of their games, and they have Genty in the Heisman conversation, or as a favorite, it's they're going to be a top 6 team in the nation ranking wise if they're 12-1 or 11-1, and Wazoo could end up being at that 11 spot. It really isn't out of the consideration.
Yeah, I just want to shout out Ashton Genty. I can't not talk about this.
Keep doing the weekly checkup.
We should. He has 95 carries for 1,000 yards, 16 touchdowns.
It's nuts.
He has played in the 5 games this year. He's only played in the first half in 2 games. Yeah. Meaning he has played 4 games of football. He is averaging 250 yards and 4 touchdowns per game. 11 yards per rush. It is so insane that Travis Hunter is one of the better receivers in college football and arguably the best corner in college football. And I don't think he honestly has a chance at the Heisman.
No.
People are really talking about this like it's a 2-horse race, and I don't think it is at all. What Ashton Genty is doing to college football right now is like disgusting. Just wanted to shout him out because as he continues to shine, it's just going to make Wazoo look better and better hanging out in that shadow.
It's like and both of these guys are going to win MVPs, but it's like Shohei and Aaron Judge. It's like Shohei is leagues better statistically, like as a hitter than Aaron Judge is.
Yeah,
but Aaron Judge also plays like center field. It's like, oh, which one would you rather have?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'd still probably rather have Shohei.
Yeah, that's correct.
The Ashton Genty versus the Travis Hunter.
Exactly. It's like, but one can do a couple more. It's like, and really, it's like pretending that Shohei doesn't pitch, you know, because he really is like Travis Hunter meets Ashton Genty. But yeah, I get your point.
Yeah.
All right. Anything you want to touch on? We talked about Wazoo. We got Iowa coming up. That's a very winnable game. A very similar matchup to Michigan. I feel good.
Yeah, I feel good about that one. I guess. The UW Iowa game, UW is plus 2.5. Iowa's favored by 2.5 points in that game. How do you feel about that? We've been taking our weekly, spread in the UW game. So how are you feeling?
I feel good. It's so apparent why that's the case, and that's because we have played 6 games this season, and we are 4-0 at home, and we are 0-2 on the road, and this game is on the road. So I completely understand why it is. At some point, I believe that Michigan game shook me out of a stupor. I believe in this team and what they can do, and obviously to do what they need to do, they're going to have to win games on the road. They're going to go out and they're going to win their first game of the season on the road against Iowa. Take the 2.5. Love that. They're like a worse Michigan team, but we're not playing them at home.
Yeah, I know. I really like the plus 2.5 points there. I think UW's going to win this game, so take those points. All right, should we? Do you want to jump?
Let's do value dogs.
Value dogs? Stay on football.
Yeah,
all right.
Finish up football.
Again, for new listeners, we're going to start off just describing what value dogs are. Value dogs. The last decade around that time, underdogs have been more successful against the spread than what's the opposite of an underdog?
Overdog.
Favorite. That's the word.
Fucking Vegas. The overdogs. Everything changed when the overdogs attacked.
So every week we pick 3 underdogs, each of us, that we think are going to cover. Currently, we are both not doing the best. John, you are sitting hotly at 4-8, and I am sitting at 5-7.
That means we're both winning you money. You're welcome, listeners.
We both went 1-2 last week, and last week was a rough week for underdogs. They went 4-10 against the spread. So we did pretty good. We got 2 of the 4. That's a 50% success rate for us.
That's pretty impressive, all things considered.
And currently, underdogs against the spread after last week are sub 50% on the season. They're 37, 38, and 3. So we should be closer to 500.
Yeah,
we should be closer to 500. We're hoping for 3-0 weeks to get us right at that.
It just hasn't been a bountiful harvest to choose from, is what you're saying. You gave me the first pick last week. That was very generous. I would like to not return the favor. I want the first one again. I'm kidding.
I was so ready.
No, take it.
All right, let me look at my notes. Wow, my first pick this week.
This motherfucker can't read. Don't believe it. Don't believe a second of those fake pages.
Is this week 7? Week 6?
Week 6.
Week 6. Sound of Seattle value dogs. I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals plus 5 against the Green Bay Packers. The Cardinals are so hit or miss. They've been a little hit or miss offensively, but I think the Packers are just not that great defensively. Like as an NFL defense, they're like a middling team, and I think the Cardinals have a good offense. And the Packers, I get that they're trying to prove that they can kind of squash a team, but they've had a couple rough weeks with Jordan Love coming back. I think he's going to dice them up, but I think offensively the Cardinals can keep up with them, and I could see this being like a 24-28 game.
Totally. No, I think I could easily see the Cardinals winning this game. Their defense is bad, but their offense is very dynamic. Packers have had issues with injuries. Jordan Love hasn't looked amazing. He kind of got bailed out by Tucker Kraft a couple times last week in what was a very rough first half for him. 5 points is a lot of points for a team that I think could easily win this game.
Yeah, especially big favorites, big favorites. Big underdogs have covered in like 80% of the games this season.
Yes.
Like, it's been crazy.
Those have been the effective bets. It's like we need to stop taking as many like +2s and start taking the +7s because you're right. That's where the value has been.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised to see Cardinals +5 after an impressive comeback win against the Niners.
Yeah.
So, we'll see how that goes. I really like that pick, but I'm going to try to continue my trend of avoiding your picks.
Do what you can, man.
Yeah, we'll see how it's a fairly barren cupboard this week, so we might overlap a bit. For my first pick, I am taking something which I will not need to explain because we've talked about it at length. I am taking the Seattle Seahawks +3.5 against the Niners. I think it's a get-right game. I think they kind of need to win this game to not, waste a 3-0 start to the year. And 3.5 points is a really good spread. I think when you have the sub-3 lines, it's like kind of even money. You don't see a lot of NFL games come down to 1 or 2 points.
Yeah.
But when you can get over a field goal in your spread, that's a lot of value there. And I think the fact that the Hawks could lose this game by 3 and you'd still win money is good value. So I'm taking the Hawks.
I struggled picking anybody that was below like a 5-point threshold purely because of the statistics of this week.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go with that one, but I totally understand where you're coming from. Especially if getting a full 3.5, getting the half point over a field goal.
Yes.
Is a nice cover for the Seahawks. Hopefully they can win that game, but I think it's safe. For my second pick, I'm going to go with the New England Patriots +7 against the Houston Texans.
Yuck.
And hear me out. Drake May is starting this week. This is the week of Drake May and Jalen Polk, who you guys should all pick up and have on your bench now in fantasy football, because the Drake May Jalen Polk connection is going to be real. I really think the Patriots are going to play the Texans well, and I think this is the game where it's like, oh, Drake May got us to within 3 points of the Texans and we barely lost. Like, this is our quarterback of the future. Like, this is purely a vibes check as well as the point spread. 7 points is a lot. Even if they win by a touchdown, they're still you're fine. You push.
Sure.
And I think cheap touchdown potential. If you're down 13, you score a touchdown, you're totally fine. So 7 points is a lot. Patriots haven't been great this season, but this is the turnaround that they need. I know you're going to say it was a bad pick, but I'm not
going to yuck your yum that much, my guy. It's 7 points is a lot of points, and we just said those have been the bets that have covered this year. So I'm not going to throw cold water. The counter would be that this Patriots offense has been the worst in the NFL, and that even though Drake May cannot be worse at throwing the football downfield than Jacoby Brissett, he cannot be worse. Literally cannot. He could make more mistakes. The one thing, to Jacoby's credit, the only thing you can say about him is that he's done a good job protecting the football.
Yeah.
With the amount of pressure that Drake May is going to be under immediately in this game, sack fumbles and interceptions and potentially pick sixes are things that I worry about. With a rookie quarterback in his first start, think about what happened to Bo Nix. But you are correct. They cannot be worse passing the ball downfield.
Let me add one more thing. Nico Collins isn't playing in this game. He's out. So
excellent
the
point.
Texans are going to, I think Stephon Diggs is going to probably have a huge game, but the Texans are going to struggle a bit, I think, offensively.
And it'll be interesting. I know there's been a lot of chatter about the Patriots being really frustrated with them not, actively trying to win by putting Drake in and competing. I'm curious to see if this kind of galvanizes both their offense and their defense to kind of bring their A game. Because we were really impressed by their defense in the first couple of weeks, and then it seemed like they were kind of getting frustrated and, maybe not. They can clean some things up. So if their defense plays up to their potential, I like +7.
Yeah, I will say the other real threat is everybody's been so concerned because the New England offensive line sucks, and it's this could be Drake May comes in for 5 plays and pulls an Aaron Rodgers and it's just gone the rest of the season.
Correct.
It could be really tough, but
which
I'm playing the hopeful card there.
Yeah, no, that's tough. And 7 points is a lot of points, man. So I will allow you to have it.
Thank you.
We talked too much about the Patriots. All right, with my second pick of value dogs, I am taking the Washington Commanders +6.5 against the Baltimore Ravens. I can't believe this wasn't the one you took. I was certain you were going to take it.
It's on my list, but because you took it, I just won't take it.
What a classy guy. Look at this guy. I think this is a great pick, and it's scary because the Ravens have looked completely dominant the last couple of weeks. Obviously had a bit of a shootout last week, but their running game with Derrick Henry has looked so mean. And the Commanders, people just still don't really trust it. They haven't necessarily seen it against high-level competition.
That's one of the things that really held me back.
Sure. But the fact of the matter is they have been the most competent week-to-week offense we have seen in the NFL so far. Jaden Daniels looks like a complete stud. He's leading the NFL in passing completion, and this is a guy that we expected to be controlling the game with his legs. He hasn't even really done that a ton. He brings it up on big plays, but they just look really, really good offensively. Their running games looked really good with Brian Robinson Jr., but it's also worth noting the Ravens, they've got a decent front. Their linebackers are okay. Their secondaries and their safeties are so bad. You can throw on this team a lot.
I was going to drop this stat. Ravens are 26th in just like defense.
Yeah, in like points allowed defense. Yeah. You can move the ball downfield against this team, which is exactly what Jaden Daniels has been doing to everybody this season. So I have no doubts that Derrick Henry is going to have an excellent game on the ground and that the Ravens are going to score points. I'm very confident that the Commanders are as well. And how many times are we going to be like, oh, let's not take the Commanders plus points? They haven't lost a game yet. They look completely dominant. Plus 6.5 is a lot of points. They could lose this game, but they're going to score. Yeah. So I like the line.
Yeah. No, I think 6.5 is a good number, especially like after the last few weeks. They've been averaging, 35 points a game, basically?
It's crazy. Yeah. They look unstoppable.
So I have no qualms with you taking it. I just wanted to avoid it because I was worried it's just a step up team-wise. Like they've been playing the Cardinals, the Browns. Like these teams are not good. And so for them to come up against the Ravens, the Ravens are on a hot stretch. Like the Ravens have been crushing teams.
Correct.
Or at least scoring efficiently.
Yeah, their offense has been crushing teams. Obviously that Bengals game was incredibly close. But yeah.
So we'll see. But I like the pick. All right, with my third and final pick for our Week 6 value dogs, I'm going to take the Broncos +3 against the Chargers. This is a matchup of two top 3 defensive teams. The Chargers are number 1 ranked in points allowed. Yeah. Granted, they've only played 4 games, but in points allowed, they're top 3. And I think there's an argument to be had for the rest where the Chargers didn't play this last week. They had a bye. They've had time to prepare. But I really think this Broncos team is actually, we talked a lot of smack about Bo Nix, but I think they've been pretty good at least holding teams points-wise and been able to stay in games. I think 3 points is I'm kind of hoping for a push or a Broncos win. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't think the Broncos are going to lose by 2. So this is more of a shot, but I didn't want to take the Commanders +6.5 with you, so I had to pick it.
No, honestly, I don't dislike this line at all. Both defenses are very solid. Chargers offense is borderline inept against a decent defense.
Especially with Herbert being injured.
Yeah.
It's been a problem.
And we saw it against the Chiefs of the second that they're playing a competent defense that they just can't spam run again and again and again. Things get a lot harder for them. And I'm not going to say I like Bo Nix. You're not going to get me to say it. But the one thing I will say is their offense has looked better and better every single week.
Yes.
Now, it's just been a little bit better each week, and it started in absolute horror show territory. But I do think in the last couple of games, they move the ball downfield and they score points. They can get into the end zone. That's not something I can really say about the Chargers. I'm surprised that the Broncos aren't favored in this game. And in a game that you would expect to be very low scoring, the over-under is 35.5. Seahawks Niners is 50. So a game that you expect to be low scoring, +3 is more valuable because you're expecting the margin to be small. So
for sure,
I really like that pick.
I was feeling good about it. Like I said, there was an argument for the 10 days of rest for the Chargers, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, Justin Herbert does not need 10 days of rest. He needs the rest of the season.
He needs somebody to throw the ball to is a good start.
Yeah. So I really was just like, the Broncos have, Cortland Sutton has looked awesome as a pass defender this season too. So,
and their running game is starting to get on track. Javonte Williams has been there, moving up and down the field back, and he's been much more efficient the last couple of weeks. And then Jaleel McLaughlin's just their red zone toy. They love to get him outside in the red zone, and he's been really efficient. So that's pretty good. But I'm not taking that one because I do think that there's one more line that I'm just kind of ravenous. And that is my Indianapolis Colts +2.5 against the Tennessee Titans.
You have them at +2.5. I see that they're -1 currently. I don't know where you're looking. If you can find that line on whatever thing. I support that pick.
This is Vegas Insider, but yeah, maybe it's not.
Oh, it did move. Crazy. Okay. I was looking at it earlier today. It was -1.
Freaking action on the Titans.
The Titans were +1 and people were taking that one? That's nuts.
Yeah. Maybe there's been some injury we haven't heard about with the Colts, but regardless, the fact of the matter is this Titans offense has looked bottom of the barrel bad. Now that Denver's gotten off their corner, it's been the Titans and the Patriots arguing over who should be executed first. And ever since Anthony Richardson went down and Daddy Flacco came in, he has looked amazing. He's been unbelievable. It's crazy that Joe Flacco is still this good at football.
Yeah.
He did this exact same thing with the Browns last year. It's just wild. I love Joe Flacco. And he's, really kind of unlocked this offense. Pittman is going to be out. Michael Pittman, which may be affecting the line because he's, their number one receiver. But Jonathan Taylor's back and healthy. I expect them to run the ball effectively. I expect them to move the ball downfield to Alex Pierce and Josh Downs. I just can't believe a team with better offensive weapons, a significantly better and monumentally smarter quarterback, and, maybe an equal or a little bit worse defense is +2.5 against this Titans team that likes to throw pick sixes. So I love the pick, and I believe in Joe. So give me that.
No, honestly, I thought this, like I said, I thought this was -1. Otherwise, I would have picked the Colts to win this game. So I think this is a great pick for all the reasons you said. So no qualms with that one.
All right. I just want to add, because I forgot mine last week, my rancid dog of the week.
Ooh, good call.
The underdog that you should stay away from at all costs.
Which always wins, by the way. They always win against this one.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not very good at this. I just do it. And that's going to be the New York Jets +2.5 against the Buffalo Bills. The Jets have looked awful. They really have. Their offense does not look dynamic at all. People were drafting Breece Hall number 1 overall in fantasy drafts, and he looks like the second best running back on his team compared to Braylon Allen. Aaron Rodgers looks very old. Garrett Wilson had 22 targets in the last game and barely cracked 100 yards. So this is not working offensively. And their defense has been very disappointing.
They just fired their head coach.
They just fired their head coach. Well said. So, that can galvanize teams, but they also, have some stuff to figure out. And on the other side, the Bills have been very good. They just have had a couple of rough weeks. Josh Allen dealt with a probable concussion last week, but they could have easily beaten Houston. 2.5 is not enough points.
No, I 100% agree. I think Saleh as a coach is so much more defensively minded too. It's like, what is this coaching change going to do for the offense of this Jets team?
Yeah.
Nothing. The one thing that I will say is this Bills defense is not as stout as I think it has been the past few years.
Correct.
So there is some argument there for this Jets team to be able to score. But and the Josh Allen thing might cause some issues, but I think this Jets defense really isn't as good as people thought it was early in the season. So overall, I don't really understand the 2.5 line. I get where you're coming out with the rancid dog, but with all that being said, liquidate your assets, folks. +2.5 on the Jets right now.
Yeah, it's been a rough stretch for my rancid dogs. They're not as bad as they look. Turns out you don't have to refrigerate a hot dog. All right, that's enough football. Let's talk a little football.
Look at you.
Hey, I'm the master of the transitions. The Seattle Sounders have earned their name back. They are no longer they who shall not be named, as they were following the LAFC loss.
Which one?
I don't want to talk about it. They have played twice in the last week. 2 wins. A 3-0 win against Vancouver, followed by a 1-0 win against Colorado. This team seems to be putting it together at just the right time. Where do you want to start with these guys?
I think we just have to talk about how they're sitting third in the Western Conference after that stretch, and
Correct.
They're setting themselves up to play Colorado right now. It was a team we just beat. They're also, Vancouver's in the 8th seed. These teams are teams that are good teams. They're in the top 8 in the conference, and they're beating them. It's just they've been so efficient defensively. They haven't allowed many goals over the past 10 weeks at this point. It feels like they've been playing solid defense for such a long time. And then you've got yourself set up to be in a likely second round match or set of games against LAFC, which doesn't necessarily make me feel great, but playoff wise, I feel like we're doing ourselves a favor by getting to this point.
Yeah, this team has arguably been the best team in the MLS since the calendar rolled over to September. In that stretch, they have won 5 matches, tied 1 match, lost 0 matches. And in those 6 matches, they've allowed 0 goals scored in all 5 of their wins.
Yeah.
5 of their 6 last matches, they've allowed 0 goals scored, 2 against San Jose in the tie. So if you're wondering where this run is coming from, their offense has been solid, a couple nice outings, but they have 2 1-0 wins. It's because their defense has been locked in over this stretch. So, yeah, pretty crazy that this team that started the season, I think they got all the way down to 12th in the Western, and
they didn't win a game for the first 5 weeks.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then spent a lot of the season hanging around the 7 seed. That really seemed to be, it's okay, can we crawl up out of this? To see them go on a run like this, to get all the way back up into 3rd, and technically still have a chance of knocking LAFC down to 3rd without beating them once all year, is pretty crazy and pretty encouraging. So, I'm not going to say I'm a believer until I see them beat an LA team when it matters. I can't. But they should win their last game of the season, rivalry week against Portland on the 19th. So we got 10 full days until their next match. But assuming they do that, they will be 2nd or 3rd in the Western Conference going into the playoffs. I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, no, looking ahead to the playoffs, I am excited for what's going to happen. It'll be fun. I have never really, last year, we didn't really follow the Sounders as tightly as we have this year. Sure. And I'm excited to see them, and watch some playoff soccer in the MLS. Especially we're hanging out this upcoming weekend with some of our Portland friends, and I will be interested to talk to them about how they feel about.
That's a great point. We're going to get all our soccer guys. We're going to have a way better time next week talking about soccer. We'll be dropping terms you've never heard us use before.
Our boy Zach, if you're listening to this, we're excited to talk to you.
Come prepared with notes, my guy. Just another shout out. I wanted to shout out Albert Rusnak, who scored goals in both wins this week.
He's been turning it on.
A penalty kick against Vancouver and then our only goal against Colorado. So that's been nice to see because it's not just Jordan Morris, which is exciting. And then, defense has been locked in.
For sure. And we'll take another look at the Portland game probably next week because, like we said, it won't happen until next weekend. So no rush to dive into that one. And we do think we're going to win. So.
Yeah, but overall, a very encouraging week, and it's a team that's going to, hopefully be able to make a run in the MLS playoff.
Yeah. All right. You know what else started, John? This was yesterday. Our Seattle Kraken going up against the St. Louis Blues. First game of the NHL season, weirdly enough, in Seattle at 1:30 p.m. I don't know why they did that to the kids.
Zero pomp and circumstance. That's crazy.
It was probably because the Utah team they had the 4:00 game and they wanted that to be the only thing on the broadcast. But
sure.
Kraken, a weird first game of the season. They take the lead 2-0 in the second pretty quickly. It was kind of right off the bat, 2 goals in the first couple minutes. And then the Blues just kind of storm back over the course of the second period and end up taking it 3-2. A weird one, definitely. Just I feel like hockey has these kind of momentum swings. The Kraken, both of their goals, I think, were scored within a minute of each other.
Yeah.
So really weird. But let's talk more about what we're expecting for this team and how this team has changed from the offseason. What's been going on? Dan Bylsma is the guy they picked up.
Bylsma,
the coach. He is a much more offensive-minded coach. And I think the big change from last year that we wanted to see was consistent offense. That the year that they made the playoffs 2 years ago, they were so much more efficient offensively at scoring the ball. I think they were one of the top 5 teams. And last year they were a bottom 5 team in just shooting percentage and opportunities. So it was definitely a tough season for the Kraken. Bylsma is more of an offensive-minded coach, and I think it's going to be a nice change. They also picked up a couple guys that will help them offensively.
Yeah, 100%. I think we may have touched on the Bylsma hiring when it happened.
Yes.
But I certainly hadn't looked much into him or knew much about him. And today, just kind of deep dive in his biography a little bit more. He's got an impressive resume.
Yeah.
What he did, coming up, starting as a head coach in Pittsburgh, he had a lot of success over his first 6 seasons in Pittsburgh. And obviously they, have a lot of expectations, which is why he finally got the can there. But his worst full season was 47-28 as a head coach there. They made the playoffs all 6 years that he was there, and the only time they lost in a round that didn't have conference in the name was his last season, a loss in the second round against the Rangers. So he had a ton of success in Pittsburgh. Obviously, those were some very, very talented teams.
Yeah.
But to have that kind of success and then go to Buffalo, where he really struggled, much more, average, about 500 in those 2 seasons before basically being kicked down to the lower divisions for the last couple of years. It's just very interesting to see a guy have such immediate success, fall off, be coaching in the lower divisions. He's obviously was coaching our lower division affiliate last year before getting the call up to our new head coaching spot. I am excited to see if he can replicate some of that early success he had as a head coach at the NHL level. Because technically he's had 6 incredible seasons and 2 bad seasons. So if you just want to look at the statistics, it looks like there's a decent chance he can kind of turn us around. In terms of expectations, I think you hit the nail on the head. Our team underperformed last year, in my opinion. Yeah. They certainly underperformed compared to what they'd done in previous seasons. And mostly they're kind of just brought the band back this last season. A lot of important signings. They signed Joey Decord to a 5-year deal, which is exciting. We can talk about that a little bit more in a bit. Extended qualifying offers to Beniers and Tolivan. They signed Eberle, if I remember right. That was like their first move at the end of last season. So should be a lot of the same characters we're used to seeing out there. It's really going to be if they can, and if this head coach can, help them figure out their offense. That first loss to the Blues wasn't that discouraging to me. 3-2 loss, 5 goals scored in the second period, all 5. Just kind of a weird first game of the year. But it was nice to see them, score some goals in quick order. So that was obviously our big problem last year. And hopefully they can keep that up.
Yeah, I think this game, you look at it and the number of goals scored was kind of a little bit of a concern. But it was 2 breakaway goals, or there were 2 breakaway goals that happened. What was his name? I was watching it. I don't remember. Kairu, I guess was the guy's name. He had 2 goals where it was just like he had a one-on-one against Grubauer, and any situation like that is really tough for the goaltender.
Correct.
So I think we did okay, and obviously we just talked about Joey Decord getting the 5-year signing for $25 million. That's a good extension. I think Grubauer's kind of reaching the end of his term with the Kraken. He's done great things for us. We've talked about him a lot. But Decord last year had a really good season. He had a really good split 50-50, and during his time when he was the main goaltender was really good. So it's exciting. He's the young guy coming in. He's learned a lot from Grubauer, I'm sure. So that's a good one. And yeah, I just think this team, I don't necessarily have the they're going to be a playoff team feeling. I think this team is going to be more middling. I guess how many teams make the playoffs? 16? Is it 8 on each side?
It should be 6 or 8 on each side.
Yeah. So I really think they might be a top 20 team, but maybe fringe playoff contenders. Likely will be in the wild card hunt late, but I don't necessarily have the they're going to be a playoff team feeling.
Okay.
So
see, I'm a little more optimistic. I feel pretty good about them fighting around the top of the wild card standing. I think we agree on their ceiling, but I think I have a higher belief in their floor this season. I do believe last year was just kind of stagnant. And I'm hoping this year won't be as much that. And the Grubauer note's a really good one. He's been awesome for us these last couple of years. Was a big part of our playoff run.
Yeah.
When we beat the Avalanche. But he's 32 years old, and coming up on the end of his contract. And when you have a goalie that's as talented as him, you kind of either have to extend him long term or let him go. And as a 32-year-old guy, I don't really want to give him the 5-year deal.
Especially as such a young team. This team is going to be better longer term.
Correct.
He's just going to get worse.
Yeah. And so he's going to have a nice opportunity to go out this year, play well, and he will get an extension. There is a team that's going to sign him to 3 or 4 years because of the success he's had for this team. But I appreciate the thought of management of where is this team going? Where are the needs? How do we allocate funds? I think what they've done is wise.
He also, midway through the season could be a trade piece. It's this guy
excellent point.
Could be great to give to a contender that needs a goalie.
Yeah,
I think it'll be one of those things that we can rely on Decord.
Yeah, if we feel good about Decord, that's a really, really good point. Because obviously in hockey, it's way less common to have 2 guys that you're really bouncing back and forth. You see it, but it's much more common to have your primary and then 2 secondary guys that are rarely playing.
Yeah, in hockey, you can find it being a momentum type of thing when it comes to goalies.
Yes.
I think we saw that last year.
That's exactly what happened last year.
Yeah, one of the guys had a rough couple games, and they would turn to the other one for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think in the case of the Kraken this season, I think they're just gonna let Decord kind of play when it's time. I think Grubauer will get some use, and he will probably get traded, and then it'll just be Decord's turn.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I completely agree. I like the idea of when trade deadline comes around, what is this team looking like, and does it make sense to potentially move on?
Yeah,
from Grub.
All right.
Well, that was an efficient hour 10. We covered a lot of ground there.
Do you want to? I had one question for you with regards to the Mariners. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, throw it my way.
We are in the midst. We currently have the Yankees versus Royals game on, and it's tied 2-2 in the bottom of the 6th. The Mariners obviously didn't make the playoffs this year, and they can't make any moves into the end of this postseason. But how are you feeling about the team right now? In the 2 weeks that it's been since their season ended, there's been a lot of discussion of this team might just run it back. How are you feeling about what they need to do and how this season, next season, is going to go? And how do you feel looking back at last season?
Yeah, so looking at the way this season went, obviously it's a little discouraging when you're watching the playoffs. There was a lot of chaos in the AL. With Kansas City upsetting Baltimore, and then Detroit upsetting
Houston.
Yeah, which was fantastic to watch. But so, you look at that and you see opportunity. At the same time, if we would have played Houston and if we would have lost, I'm glad Detroit played and had a chance to take them down. And, I do think, the top of the AL is still pretty strong. Yankees, Kansas City are having a battle, but I do believe that we would really struggle against a team like New York or a team like the Dodgers, the Padres, if we were to get there. So, obviously would prefer to make it, but it's not like last year where I felt like there was real opportunity to win the World Series if we could have played a little differently down the stretch. This year, I don't feel quite that strongly. I'm also colored a little positively in that, as the days go by, I'm thinking less about how frustrating certain aspects of this last season was, and I'm thinking more about how just excited I am to have Julio and Randy together for a couple more years.
And Robles, yeah.
Yeah, and Robles, but particularly just I can't tell you, as a Mariners fan, how exciting it is to have two guys that you'd consider blue chip guys on offense. Obviously, we've got some excellent blue chip pitchers, but when it comes to hitters, it's just... Dude, it has been a long time since you would say they have two no-doubter blue chipper guys offensively.
And even you could really say Cal is a third. I know there's a little bit of tension there with just having a catcher in that offensive production.
It's tough. It's tough to put catchers in that conversation. Yeah. And that's what they've had a lot of really good guys. Gino had an awesome season for us. Teoscar had an awesome season for us. Going back, we've had some guys that have had awesome seasons. But even just in terms of name recognition and branding and all-star appearances and home run derbies, having guys like Julio and Randy Arozarena, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I find that to be very exciting. Heck, for all we know, Victor Robles is a more effective offensive player right now than Randy Arozarena is, but that's not even necessarily what I'm talking about. I am just very encouraged to have a team where it's not just Julio in terms of carrying the load of expectations.
Yeah.
A lot of that's going to fall on Randy's shoulders next year, too. And it'll be interesting to see how he does. But the more time goes by, the more I'm excited for next year to see a full season of the Julio-Randy thing. And, maybe it won't be that different, but it feels different to me.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think looking at this next season, I agree with a lot of people, or I wouldn't be surprised if this team's structure didn't really change that much.
Sure.
We might do a Luke Raley, Tyler Locklear platoon at first base, and then we just got to sign a third baseman, I think the underperformance of this season, you and I mentally got past a month before the season was over. It was just we knew that it was just going to be so hard to get into the playoffs after that 10-game lead was blown.
Correct.
And they did what they could. They tried, but it was definitely something where I just kind of let go of it. It wasn't a last second, we could make the playoffs, and then it was ripped from us. Like, it felt like they had
We
kind of
were
lost
pretty
it already.
prepared. Yeah.
That being said, their pitching, it's going to be great next year. It was amazing this last season. You can't expect to have that type of pitching production this next season. Like, the amount of pitching health, even with the bullpen injuries that we had to Matt Brash,
Our
and
starting
Santos,
health was outstanding.
That is crazy. Like, to get that kind of situation, and to kind of throw it away. Like, all things considered, having, and granted, if you have 3 of the guys that we have in our 5-man pitching rotations, any 3 of those guys can pitch in the playoffs
and sustain you, hopefully, over the course of the year as you deal with injuries.
Yes.
If anything, and so let me finish your point.
I'm just talking any 3 can get you to the playoffs, but if we lose 2 of those guys, our pitching now just immediately implodes. It's such a strong point in our team. And so I just really appreciated this season and thought there was a chance that we could use that because of the health, and we could throw Brian Wu as a bullpen pitcher.
Yeah,
he was a closer in college. That's just the kind of role that he was kind of born to do, as just a short term throw 99 instead of 95. He could be awesome in that role. It's just we have all these guys for that, and it was disappointing to lose this season for the pitching staff.
There's no doubt about that. Our starting pitching was unbelievable last year, and it's a real shame to waste that combination of talent and health. I think I'm more encouraged than you are in that regard because, one, injured guys tend to get injured, and we have pretty healthy guys.
I also think the Mariners do a good job of keeping their guys healthy.
Correct. And, obviously there's luck stuff involved, and Tommy John happens to everybody eventually, so it's you kind of there is luck factor involved. But on the other hand, our relief pitching was decimated last year. We were supposed to have this 3-headed monster that was supposed to compete for the best, 3-headed relief pitching in baseball, and 2 of the 3 basically didn't play all year.
Yeah.
Put a ton of pressure on Munoz, thank you. Andre Munoz. To miss Santos and to miss Matt Brash for basically the whole year. So regardless of what happens with starting pitching, maybe George Kirby goes down for 60 games, whatever. It can't get worse for our relief pitching.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, we'll have those 3 guys next year. And that, in my mind, makes a bigger difference than to lose one of our 5 starters for the year. Yeah. Say George Kirby goes down for the year. He gets Tommy John and he's done. If our relief pitching stays healthy next year, I think in the aggregate, that's a more effective group because we saw again and again our starters have good performances and then get blown with the relief pitching. And if we can just even if we have to lose, and we don't necessarily need to, but even if we do lose a little bit of starting pitching production, I think you can see a lot of ground made up for in the health of the relief pitchers. But we'll see. Who knows how that will actually turn out next year. Yeah,
that's totally fair. Yeah, just wanted to have that discussion. We're 2 weeks out and figured we would talk about it.
We just missed talking about the nerves, man. That's really what it is.
We gave the superlatives last week. We had to give the
post-mortem.
The post-mortem. Anything else to talk about, John? I think, we basically hit every single Seattle sport besides the Storm, and they were eliminated from the playoffs, and we don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, we're not ready. Too soon. No, I think we are good. We'll have a lot to discuss next week.
All right, man. Well, for John Carey, I'm Tyler Cartwright. I'm going to look at the camera finally for the first time in this entire pod. This has been the Sound Up Seattle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode of Sound Up Seattle, please feel free to give us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Give us a little subscribe. Give us a like. And you can find Sound Up Seattle on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, all at Sound Up Seattle, all lowercase, all one word. You can email us your questions, comments, or concerns. Side note, I got an email on our Sound Up Seattle email, but it was from YouTube, and they called us a spam account, and they deactivated our account.
No!
But it was for a day, and then they put it back on. So we're fine, we're back. But just in case you were worried, that you were where did our subscription to Sound Up Seattle go? It's back.
Yeah, we're just, we're kind of bad boys. We're stirring up some trouble with the admins.
You can find me, Tyler, at TyCard50, everywhere that's important, and you can find John
watching way more football than I should.
Putting his hands in front of the camera way too much this spot.
I didn't even have this up. Normally I've got my like 2 screens and then this, but I had all my stats and stuff up, guys. I probably was just doing this.
There was a couple times where I was trying to be like, think you're
suck it.
Well, anyways, we hope you guys have a good week. Go Seahawks. That's happening when this gets released. It's going to be happening today. So big game for the Seahawks. Let's go Hawks, baby.